Hello and welcome to Off Track, the motorcycle racing podcast. I'm your host, Dave Neal. Oh, no, stop. Give it a rest. Thank you. And this is the first of a couple of shows looking back over 2022, where we revisit a handful of guests across each episode with a little bit of chat from me either side of them. It's also the last one before Christmas. We'll have Christmas week off, then we'll be back with another look back show in the new year before we build up to the relaunch in February. So plenty of time for you to look back on our 106 shows to keep you occupied. As always, remember to give us a follow, like, share, and subscribe on the socials. We're on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and our fledgling YouTube channel. And just recently, we set up our Telegram channel. Not without a few teething troubles while we got used to it, but it's there now. Eventually, we'll be showing behind-the-scenes videos and photos, but until we're set for that, it's a great place to get early info for the show and the ability to ask questions of our guests before they come on. Like a free version of Patreon for now. If you're on Telegram, just search Off Track Podcast. The chat channel's also well behaved there too. Just 3 simple rules to follow and a great place to chat to other listeners and fans of the sport without someone chipping in uninvited like the rest of social media can sometimes lend itself to. In this episode, we look back at our shows with former GP star Danny Webb back in late January. We head back to the Dakota Hotel in Manchester with Matt Roberts and then finish up for this show with Scott Ogden after his first Moto3 Grand Prix in Qatar back in March. First up, Danny Webb chats about his early times in GPs and his experiences within the paddock, a far cry from the structured way riders enter the Grand Prix world of today through the various Talent Cup championships and the CEV Junior World Championship. Ladies and gentlemen, Danny Webb.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, at first it was me and Bradley Smith. I went down to Spain for a meeting. Well, it wasn't my meeting. It was actually my brother's meeting. Gary Taylor from Suzuki had set the meeting up with Alberto Puig, and he basically turned around and told my brother he was going to be too big. And that was it, really. And I only went along for the ride to, experience a MotoGP paddock sort of thing. And he turned around and asked me if I raced, what my name was, what championship I'd done, where I'd finished that year. And I told him, and he said, well, do you want to ride for me? Because I was a really freakishly small kid. I suppose that's what appealed to him, and that's why he offered me the ride. But, when you're at that age, it's difficult. You always get promised a lot of things and not many things come from it. So it was a bit like that. We kind of took it with a pinch of salt, obviously realised how big Alberto was, but you never know. So I'd actually signed a contract with UK1 Racing to do the British Championship. And then, so that was all going ahead. So, I knew I had a ride. And then come January, we didn't hear anything from that Valencia race, maybe beginning of November, right until January. And then Alberto messaged and just said, we want to book your flights to come out and sign the contract. So it was just a bit like, wow, it's, it really is happening. So, it was a whirlwind experience. Kevin Newton from UK1 Racing was doing a lot for the sport then as well. And he agreed and he let me also do the Spanish Championship, which we ended up prioritising because in the British, we had to have 24 kilos of weight of lead put on the bike to come up to weight because I was that small. And we had a few big crashes and it knocked my confidence a lot. So we decided Kevin again was fantastic and just said, let's do the Friday practices in BSB just to get your track time without any weight on the bike and then just use it as a test, really. So that's what we ended up doing. And between Alberto, Dorna and Kevin Newton, it was a fantastic idea.
So what were your first experiences of the GP paddock? So you've come in from the British Championship. It's kind of a baptism of fire pretty much back in those days. It's one of the most competitive championships around in the 125 class as it was back then. What were your first experiences in the GP paddock?
I mean, so in Spain, it was pretty much like a GP paddock, but it was a lot smaller. And everyone come and watched the 125 race and then went home afterwards. They didn't bother staying for the Supersport or the Superbike race. So it was like that was a big shock to the system. And just the way Dorna went about things, like we was 13, 14 years of age. They would fly me and Bradley out for 2 weeks. We would do 2 weeks training, supermoto, cycling, 30 kilometre, 40 kilometre cycles when you're 14 years of age and in the gym. It was a full-on training session and no parents were allowed even to come out with us when we was training and doing stuff like that. So we was there on our own, which in some ways it's good, some ways it's bad, but it does make you grow up quicker. And then also at the race meetings, we was with the team, and that was it. So the parents could come out and watch, but they wasn't allowed to get involved in any way. So again, it's a steep learning curve, but I think it's a good learning curve because you have to learn to stand on your own 2 feet. So I was kind of used to that sort of way of racing. And then the second year I was with the academy, I was battling with Paul Espargaro at the Spanish Championship, crashed on the last lap, and I was really down in the dumps. And then the Monday when we just got home, Alberto had called and said, do you want to do the Barcelona Grand Prix this weekend? So me and my dad was like, wow, well, is it even possible? And I was 15 at the time. So, but anyway, we done it, and the fantastic thing was everything was free of charge. Dawn had paid for the lot, or I think for the Grand Prix, we was in the Repsol Honda team. So, but it was literally on the Monday, we got the authorization to do it Tuesday night. Wednesday, we flew out to Barcelona. Thursday morning, I walked into the back of the Repsol Honda race truck, which I was teammates with Bradley Smith for that weekend. And there was a brand new set of levers hanging up for me in Repsol Honda colours. And I was just like, wow, it was just amazing. And I think I was that shocked with everything and that. I was like a rabbit in headlights. I just couldn't believe what was going on. The race weekend didn't go that great. Friday afternoon was quite good in the wet. We was quite quick, but Saturday morning, unfortunately, I crashed and snapped my wrist in 2 places. It was quite a bad break. So it wasn't the best of debuts, but the experience was it was unbelievable. I'd never experienced it. I was probably a bit overwhelmed, but it was an amazing experience.
But that's the kind of experience now that you can bring to the young lads that you take, because very few of the boys that you have in the academy are going to experience that level. And I don't think anybody will experience that level ever again, such is the nature of how the sport's changed. But that kind of experience, mate, that's invaluable.
Yeah, exactly. And it's all them sort of things like, I wish I'd have gone about things a different way, but I'd never been in that situation. And it's not like my dad done club racing before, so it wasn't like he helped me as much as he could, but I didn't, and all the guys around me has helped me as much as I could. But personally, I just didn't know how to deal with the whole situation. But it's all them sort of things. And also, throughout my Grand Prix career and everything else I've done in my career, I've learned a lot of things and I've made a lot of mistakes, but I've also made a lot of good decisions. And this is what I want to do with the GP camps, is just try and teach them how to go about racing the right way. And, sometimes I've gone racing about, the wrong way. But that's what I want to bring to it. I want to make sure, give them advice. Of course, they will do whatever they want to do with that advice, but give them the advice they need to try and go about racing the right way, because racing's getting harder and harder and harder, and it's costing more and more money, to make it easier for them to present themselves right, to go about things the right way, to try and do things and make it work the first time round, because now you're getting opportunities. You get that one opportunity and you might not get that opportunity again. So that's the whole point in the GP camps. And but yeah, I've been through a lot. I've made a lot of mistakes, but I've made some very good decisions as well. So
you only get that experience by going through it, and with age comes maturity as well. It's kind of a vicious circle, isn't it? You've got the young kids that you're looking at for at the GP camp who've got all their career ahead of them. The experiences that you've been through, good, bad, and indifferent. It's at such a young age as well, because, mate, you haven't even aged. You make me sick.
I feel like I've aged.
You might do, but you don't look.
Cold morning.
Every time I see you around yeah, that's the big difference when the injuries come back to haunt you.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Your first full season was 2007 in GPs, and was a good, strong season. At what point in that season did you finally feel like a GP racer, and you could finally be in the moment, if you like, and that the rabbit in the headlights feeling had subsided?
That season I really struggled. beginning of the season, I had some big crashes in Qatar just by not having the knowledge, just running offline a little bit and hitting a bit of dust and going down. And that really knocked my confidence. But then we went to Jerez and I was strong at Jerez. But unfortunately, I had a big crash in one of the practices or qualifying. I can't quite remember. I had someone brake check me and it was my teammate, which wasn't great. But, that was a big crash and that kind of really knocked me. So I really struggled then. I was going to new tracks and you've got to get up to speed straight away. You've got no choice. So I did struggle massively with confidence. But towards the end of the year, so we was in Estoril and the team come to us. We'd had a 2-year deal, but contracting kind of in racing sometimes don't mean hasn't got the paper it's written on is probably worth more than that. So, they turned around to us and we did have, Dorna helped. I don't know what they done. I think it was passes and stuff like that they helped us out with for the team. So, we didn't have to put any money towards it. But the team did turn around at Estoril and said, if you want to carry on, you're going to have to bring 150 grand with you. And we just said, well, look, that's never going to be possible. As much as we wanted to carry the dream on, it wasn't possible. It wasn't realistic. So at that point, I was out of a ride. So after Estoril, we went on to the 3 flyaways. It was Japan, Malaysia, and Australia. We got to Japan, and it was wet. And I scored. I was 13th in the race, and that was the first ever points scoring position the team had been in. I think since Aoki won the championship for them in '96 or something. So it was 11 years later. So it was a massive thing for the team. And also at that point, it was a big thing to score points in World Championship. So the team literally, after that race, renewed my contract. No money asked for, nothing. Renewed the contract. And then that gave me a massive confidence boost. So Australia, I was battling for the points and I crashed in the dry. So that was brilliant. And then Malaysia, I just got along with the track well and rode well there and outperformed my teammate. And then Valencia also, rode well, outperformed my teammate. And so, I was on a bit of a roll. So that year we was on Hondas and the team did have a big sponsor come on just as the season had started. So they did have good budget. And the year after, 2008, they decided to swap to an Aprilia. And you always have that, when you get that bit of doubt in your mind with racing, you always think, oh, it must be me. It can't be the bike. You kind of, the first thing to do is to blame the bike, definitely. That's just a racer's instinct.
Always.
But you do start to wonder about yourself when the results don't come. It's a natural thing to do. And then, so I just thought, is this level too high for me? Just am I not cut out for it? So we went to the first test in Valencia on the Aprilia. It was the bog standard one. We still hadn't had the kit arrived for it. And I think we was like 8th, literally went 2 seconds a lap quicker on the Aprilia. And I was just like, wow, I'm meant to, that's when I genuinely felt I'm meant to be here. It was a crazy year, 2008. I had an American teammate, Stevie Bonds. He was just absolutely nuts. Absolutely, just a crazy, crazy bloke. And then I had a Dutch teammate, Hugo Vandenberg, an amazing guy, lovely guy. We all got along like a house on fire. And the team was a Dutch team, so laid back. It was just a fantastic atmosphere. And also that year, I managed to get a suspension guy from the UK who was working with my brother in the R6 Cup. So the team employed him to come with us also to try and boost, because we had 2 English-speaking riders. Well, and Hugo spoke very good English, so it was kind of the right thing to do. So we had him as well. So that also boosted the team's performance as well. We arrived to Qatar. It was the first year of the night races. End of the first test, I was second. And I was just like, I was shocked in my performance. And we was having so much fun, off track and, all the shenanigans, what was going on. We had a Dutch guy, kind of looking after the riders, and we were winding them up to do stuff in the hire car and writing hire car off before we'd even got to the track and just all them sort of things. It was just, we were 17-year-old kids having an absolute blast, living the dream, racing motorcycles around the world. And and we finished 5th in the first round at Qatar. It was only, and I think it was only up until last year, they actually went faster than what me and Scott Redding went. on the Moto3 bike. So, and that was over 10 years ago. So amazing. It was just an amazing experience. And 2008, obviously Scott come and join me, which was fantastic. You know, we was best of mates as it was. So that made it even better. I didn't feel so alone. Bradley was in the paddock, but I wasn't. Me and Bradley are two completely different people. So yeah, it was an amazing to have Scott there. That year I was fast, but I was stupid. I crashed a lot. I wasn't just taking 15th, 14th as a result. I wanted to be in that leading group, and if I wasn't, I was on the floor. So again, them experiences, that's what I want to take to the GP camp. And because now I look back, you know, if I'd have just been a little bit more reserved in them times we didn't quite have the bike working right, then you don't know where things could have gone. But you know, you can't look back and think like that. That's why I'm putting it into my experiences into good use now, and hopefully put them towards the lads who come on the camp.
How times have changed for the junior riders of today, eh? Danny's doing a great job with his GP camp up at Pete Bose Champions Flat Track School over in Lincolnshire, working with the Neve twins and coaching talented riders such as Charlie Nesbitt, Luke Hopkins and Harrison McKay, to name but three. And we wish Danny and the camp every success. A cold afternoon in Manchester was warmed up nicely by some spicy nuts and the presence of Eurosport presenter Matt Roberts. Matt does a fantastic job on both the World and British Superbike coverage, and I don't think too many people will forget Matt and the boys' emotional intro to the Saturday coverage at Brands Hatch ahead of the Chrissy Rouse tribute. He's been a big part of the Eurosport team since 2013 and hopefully has a few more years yet. So without further ado, ladies and gentlemen, Matt Roberts.
Enjoyed it. I really enjoyed it. And I was lucky because Gav was there with me. To be honest, we were doing that together. You know, we shared that experience. Told you already how close I am with him, and a lot of that stuff brought us even closer. And so I look back on it really fondly. There were other friends I made there too. There was a group of about 5 or 6 of us, and for a few years it was just a blast. You know, it was everything you would want it to be, really. And I loved the travel. At the beginning, I loved it. You know, I mentioned that E-Trippers show that I did before. It was something that was in me. I wanted to travel. I wanted to see the world, and that he gave me the opportunity to do that in such an incredible way. You know, to be paid to travel the world. I don't think I took it for granted at the time, but looking back now, I just think, wow, like what an amazing thing to have had happen to me. So I do think I made the most of that. And I enjoyed it, but I definitely got to a point where I was over it. And I can remember that point really vividly. It was 2012, 11, I think, actually. Might have been 11. But it was at Indianapolis. And I got to the hotel. I travelled a long way to get there. 3 flights, whatever, blah, blah, blah. I got to my hotel room. I threw my bag in the room. And I just looked out the window and I thought, a cool city, bikes everywhere. And I just looked out and I thought, I don't want to be here. I just don't want to be here. And that was a tipping point. And actually, I was in a difficult situation there because my career, what I'd been working all that time towards, was just in a sweet spot. It was just taking off, and I knew I had to commit to it. But in terms of the travel and the lifestyle, I was over it. So I knew it was going to... So those 2 or 3 years, while I was doing the job that I always wanted and that I loved, presenting MotoGP on the BBC, actually inside, it was an effort because the travel and stuff had just got a bit too much for me, and I was over the lifestyle, if you know what I mean.
That's a statement that sort of in equal measure has and hasn't surprised me, because the travel is such a big part of MotoGP and being away for so long. But at that point of time in your career, to understand that and then to accept it, but then still carry on for another 3 seasons, 11, 12, 13. That must have taken an awful lot of commitment from you, both mentally as well as professionally. Because it is still the dream job, but if you're not in the place for it mentally, then it does become even more of a bind, I would suspect.
Yeah, so whether or not I did it consciously at the time, I'm not sure. But what I would say is that, you know, it's important to think about why you're doing stuff. Now, if you're in a job where you don't enjoy it, but it gives you other things, then you have to think about those other things while you're doing the job and not just think about, God, I hate this job. That's it's easy for me to say that, but for me, the travel and the lifestyle, I had to kind of accept it and think, well, this is not good, but look at what it's giving you, and try to look at it like that. So, like I said, I don't know if I did that consciously at the time, but when we found out in 2013 that the BBC thing was going to be over, that they weren't going to renew the rights and they were going to go to BT, there was a part of me that was relieved and happy. I was ready. At Valencia, I remember the final round, people were crying, and BBC production staff and stuff were all upset. And I remember just sitting there looking at everyone around me, thinking, I'm absolutely okay with this. This is fine. So, but I'm pretty philosophical about life and opportunities, and things happen. That's fine. In terms of the lifestyle, I was like, okay, cool, great. Maybe I'll start a family now if I'm lucky, and maybe I can, look at the other things in life.
And then the opportunity. So moving on then to what people know you best for now, making the step into Eurosport, into British Superbikes and World Superbikes, being at home and up, because I think in the early days of Eurosport, you didn't go on site for Worlds too often.
No.
I know with COVID, we haven't.
No, we didn't do Worlds on site at all the first couple of years.
So everything, you could work from home.
Yeah.
The relationship with your good lady wife, Jane.
Yeah.
Starting a family.
Yeah.
All the other good things in life,
yeah.
You can now concentrate on them and still have a job that you loved by joining Eurosport.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. And you mentioned Jane there, my wife. I've been with her since I was 18. And I wouldn't say she'd put up with all this over the years. I wouldn't like to think of it like that, but she certainly never stood in my way of anything, and she was always, you go do it. If it's what you want to do, go do it. She's still like that now. But I knew deep down that I was away a lot, and we were living in Spain for the first part of that 13 years that I was in MotoGP up to 2007. We were living in Spain. And when I went to a GP, she was on her own. And I knew that. And, at the end of 2007, we actually moved back to the UK when I went to work directly for the Beeb. So it was slightly different. But still, when you talk about anyone who works in the paddock, they make a commitment to the series, to the sport, and it's always at the detriment of something else. There's always a counterbalance to that. And for different people, it's different how they manage that, how they weigh that up, what's most important to them. Everyone's unique, and I would never kind of judge anyone for the way they do it. But for me, that balance, it was time to go the other way. Now, I'll be honest, if the BBC had kept the contract, I would have stayed for another probably 2 years, I reckon. But the fact it ended when it did, I was like, okay, that's fine. It kind of forced my hand a little bit. And I got the opportunity to move to Eurosport, like you said. And my race weekends went from leaving on a Wednesday on a flight somewhere and getting back on a Monday night to leaving on a Friday in the car and getting back on Sunday night. Or Saturday morning even. If it's Alton, I'd just jump in the car Saturday morning, there for lunchtime, and I'm back home again on Sunday night. So that was a massive game changer.
Big turnaround.
Yeah.
When you look back on your time in MotoGP, what's the best memory that you have from that time?
Oh, blimey. I think it might sound cheesy, but friendships.
It's not cheesy at all.
There was a period in 2006, 2005, 2006, things were felt like things were happening, You had the first part of the 2000s, Valentino was so above everyone else. And the machinery was from the front to the back, there was a massive disparity. And there was a dearth of characters.
Yeah.
And in 2006, you had Nicky. I mean, when he came in 2005, I think that was a massive turning point for the sport. You had the V5, you had different people winning races. You had Bayliss on the Ducati, Capirossi on the Ducati. There was so much that, I don't know, it was to me, it started then properly, this MotoGP era that we've got now, different coloured bikes winning. And that coincided with a real good group of friends that we had, myself, Gav, Katie, who used to work for Yamaha, a guy called Steve Westlake, who used to work for Honda, a guy called Chris Hillard, who works for Alpine Stars still to this day, and then a couple of the riders, Colin Edwards, John, Casey. It was just Nicky. There was just a good energy about it. And I think back to, like, we went to Laguna, you know, when MotoGP went back to Laguna in 2005, it was a big deal and there was a lot of interest in it. And those weekends were so much fun, man. We'd go to, like, LA for a couple of days before. We had the premiere of the Faster movie, like, in Hollywood. I went with Nicky to the LA Dodger Stadium. He threw the first pitch at the Dodgers game. So we all went together, like me, Gav, Nicky, photographer, Steve Westlake, who was the Repsol Honda press guy at the time. We went in a limousine from across LA to go to the Dodgers game all together. And, like, those memories are, like, they're the things that stand out to me when you say, well, you looking back, like, don't know, Laguna just always, and then Sunday night was always wild as well. So.
That's another podcast, another time.
Yeah.
We're doing it. There's stories that can be told and stories that can't be told. And we'll talk about those when we press stop later.
Okay.
They won't go out on air. When you joined Eurosport, you're taken over from Tony Carter, who was a larger than life presenter. I know he was a journo by trade that dropped into the TV role, and everybody knew that Tony was in exactly the same role. How did you embark on making that role your own? Was it just you being you in the same way that TC was? Because however that finished, however that ended, the opportunity came for you. And 8th season coming up in 2022, you're still there. And we'll talk about how it all fits together with Whit and James Hayden and Shaky in a little while. But how did you embark on that journey, making it your own?
Well, I was made to feel really welcome from the very beginning. Firstly by Stuart and by the team at Eurosport, who were lovely. Like the production crew there, Laura, Will, Ren, you know Ren. They're all such lovely people, and they made me feel. This sounds big-headed, but I'm not being. But they seemed excited that I was there, and that made me feel like, okay, I'm valued, and that's what everyone wants to feel. We were talking about that earlier, off air, and I was really made to feel like that. So yeah, I felt like I was able to be myself right from the start and just do what I was doing before. You know, of course, not everyone likes that, and that's all right. But generally, it seemed to be working for me. And I just sort of tried to bring that across. And the first thing I did, really, and you know, I don't know Tony. I didn't know him then. I've met him once, but I don't know him now. But that was not of any concern to me, frankly, because that's just the way it is. That's the industry sometimes.
That's business.
But my concern was James and James, because I was going to be working with those guys. And the first thing I did was I went down to London. I went to the premiere of an iSuperbiker thing that Mark Sloper put on in London, and then me and Jane and James and Joe, James Hayden's wife, I'm talking about. We went out as a foursome and went for dinner after. And then Whit just lives up the road from me anyway, so I met him for coffees and immediately tried to just establish a relationship with those guys that I knew was going to be key to whether or not we were successful as a team. You know, like I think that as a viewer, when you sit and you watch, I mentioned that day's training I had at the BBC earlier. One of the things the guy said to me on it was, when someone turns the TV on, you come into their living room. So if you feel awkward, if you're awkward on screen, then they're going to feel awkward, and no one wants an awkward person in their house. So when you first come on, it has to be like they've just opened the door to you, and you go, hi, you know that thing you do when someone opens the door and you're standing on the doorstep. They don't know you're going to be there. This is the old days before, you know, when you used to just go knock on someone's door, yeah. And then they'd be like, ooh, someone at the door. And it's not an Amazon order or whatever. You know, back then it used to be.
Who's friends. That? We'll go and answer it and find out.
So you answer the door, and then you know that they're not expecting you, so you go, hiya. And you do that thing that you go, hiya, it's me. So first of all, do that. Go, hiya. And then
I'm making notes on this.
And then yeah, free tips here. And then and then also, if the relationship between you and the lads you're talking to is awkward or frosty or whatever, who wants that in their living room? No one. You know, if you invite 3 people around to your house, you want everybody to be, and you also want to feel part of it too. So it's partly having the relationship with the guys you got on screen, but also making the person who's watching feel part of that as well. So that was like one of the best bits of advice I got professionally. Was on that one day training course. But like I said, it stayed with me. It stayed with me to now. So what we really try and do with the Eurosport thing is have a couple of beers on Friday. I think it's massively important. I'm always on at Greg because you know what Greg's like. He's like, I'm going to my room to read my notes. I'm like,
super folded.
Stick your notes, Greg. Come and have a beer. It's important. Like, just so happens that I quite like that side of life anyway.
You and me both.
But
hence
you know,
why we sat here now with this.
But I think it's great, you know, and we get a bit of chat going, a bit of crack going. Sometimes argue, and that's what friends do.
Yeah.
And then the next day, when the cameras roll, just try and keep that going. You know.
One thing that I thought was important to get across, and I'm grateful for Matt telling us his side, is that while working at the pinnacle of our sport is a privilege, it's far from easy, as many friends in the paddock will attest to. So it was important to know if someone has the time to enjoy the moment in amongst the relentless travel schedule, even back then, let alone with 21 rounds now. I know it's their choice and many would want to swap places with them, but certainly not me. It's not a sympathy thing, it's just an appreciation of what the staff do to make it all work. It feels like the riders have the easy bit. Scott Ogden is one of the brightest young stars of British motorcycle racing. Back in March, he joined the Moto3 World Championship alongside teammate Josh Watley, and he spoke to us from his North Lincolnshire home about the experiences of his first weekend at Big School out at Qatar. So, ladies and gentlemen, Scott Ogden.
Yeah, it was crazy because like the weekend for me, I don't really remember it. It just happened so fast.
Oh, brilliant. That'll go down well on the podcast. Thanks, mate.
Before I knew it, I was sat on the grid lining up for my first race. I was like, I just wanted some more practice, just because I knew we could get there eventually, but we just didn't try everything that we needed to try. And yeah, the Wednesday before the race, I was excited. It was a shame we didn't get to ride under lights or anything, but no, it was sort of just for me, just trying to just get into routines, just make sure I get all my kit sorted, everything, just so it just makes life a lot easier because I'm not in that position where I'm good enough to have an assistant. So I'm running around doing everything, but you need that time to think about the track. So it's just making everything perfect so you can do everything on a race weekend. And then once you have that routine, it's easy for the rest of the year. So yeah, the first one was just experience for me, just trying to learn. And yeah, I was excited on the first day, but also very nervous. But once you go out of pit lane, it's fine. All the nerves go away. And yeah, I enjoyed it a lot.
Just like riding a bike.
Yeah. I said it on the MotoGP.com. I don't know if many people watch it just because of BT, but no, they came around, or Simon Crafar came around on the grid and he was asking everyone for interviews and they were all saying no. And I was like, well, to be honest, I was nervous, but I didn't really want to say no. I felt bad. So I said yes and sort of just said, oh, I want that nervous. But no, yeah, for me, it was just another race. It was crazy seeing all the cameras and stuff, but no, it's experience.
What was I just going to say then? There's something in my mind that I was going to say. But I do have the video pass, and I did hear Simon Crafar's chat with you. I don't watch on BT Sport. We do the video pass side of things. So it was good to hear him come to you. And you did sound confident. You didn't sound nervous at all. You covered it up pretty well.
Yeah, it was, well, before the race, I was struggling. It was just everything was going. I was trying to drink so much because I thought, oh, I'm going to end up passing out in this race. And then I was trying to sort out all my kit and just everyone was saying good luck. And I was trying to say, it was just a bit, everything was mad. And I sort of just, I will do it for 20 more times. So the next one, I'll sort of just distance myself on the Sunday morning and just try get a bit of, not alone time, but just time just to think and prepare. Because if I'd had Qatar again, I thought, well, it was a perfect weekend up until the first 2 laps of the race where I sort of just bottled it a bit. So yeah, I was a bit gutted. And yeah, it's a weird one because it was a good race, and everyone says, oh, well done. But we could have done so much more in the race. We had, like, you see Moreira and stuff finishing in the top 10. It's like they couldn't do the laps alone all weekend, whereas we could do the laps alone and it should have been easier. But they got a good start and I didn't. And that was a turning point.
It was a difficult race from that perspective, wasn't it? And one thing, it sounds like that for Qatar at least, because it was the first one and everything's going past and kind of most of the time all you're seeing is vapor trails because everything's so new. When you get any new time in a new championship, knowing where things are, how things work, so much going on, I'm guessing that it was difficult to actually be in the moment to understand which is why it was such a blur for you, because you couldn't breathe and go, this is what I'm doing. This is why I'm here. But that'll come over the next couple of races, surely.
Yeah, definitely. I think, well, I'm one of those riders that I know I'm a good rider, but I don't have, still there's those doubts in my mind where I don't have the confidence. So I just need to just keep telling myself, oh, you're in this paddock for a reason. Just go and just learn. You're not expected to win the race like Costa did. You just got to just build and build and build. And if you don't win the race, or you don't win a race all year, or you don't get on the podium all year, you're not just going to be spat out the other end and back in BSB. You've got time. So I just need to just try and enjoy and have some confidence, and just, yeah, if I look back at the weekend, I'm disappointed. But at the end of the day, I watched qualifying last night. It was pretty good. It wasn't a big disaster. So yeah, I just got to take some confidence from it and just relax and enjoy, and just soak it up.
And then, I know you well enough. I knew how disappointed you'd be with the weekend, because as much as you have to tell yourself that you believe to be where you are, you also know in your heart of hearts that you're good enough to be where you are. So when the results don't quite come, you can give yourself a bit of a hard time sometimes.
Yeah, definitely. And it was like one of those things where I was in the race and I felt great, and Foggia came past, and he got me a little bit, but I was pushing so hard just to try to stay on the back, because I saw the group in front, which were, I don't know what it was about 11 to 15. I was about 17th or something. So yeah, I saw that group. I was like, oh, I've got to get on the back of that. And I sort of, on one lap, I sort of put a second to the group behind and gained half second. But I lost a little bit to Foggia, and I was sort of panicking, and I just went into a corner and tried to make everything back up. And yeah, it was stupid, because Foggia was going to the front. It was always going to happen. He was going to go through that group and pull away. So all I had to do was just do my own pace. If I wasn't gaining a second on the group in front of lap, it didn't matter. I just had to gain 0.2, 0.3, which I was doing, and I'd have been there at the end of the race, and I'd have been in the points. So yeah, I'm a bit gutted, but no, you live and learn. It's just about staying calm, and just it's sort of not like CV. The races in CV were pretty long, but it's a 40-minute race, so you've just got time. You just got to, it's experience. That's all it is.
And it's only one race a weekend and not two as well.
Yeah, for me, that like two is just, you have a bad race and then you can forget about it. Whereas now I've got 2 weeks just to think about that one mistake, which is frustrating. But now I'm trying to just focus on Indonesia now. There's not so much, well, there hasn't really been any people being there. So like the only sort of footage we have is from Asia Talent Cup. So I'm just trying to watch that, and just, it looks like a good track. It's fast. It apparently turn 5 to turn 11 is full gas on an Asia Talent Cup bike. So on a Moto 3, it won't be too far off. So yeah, I'm looking forward to it. Ballsy, which I like. But yeah, if we can get the rear wheel cover, we can do a good things there. Yeah, it's nice. Like the UK just doesn't have it. You go to a track and you have, well, no disregard, but you have 40, 50-year-olds on pit bikes. It's not riding with the best in the world. But when you go to Spain, you go on a Wednesday or Thursday, and you go and there's 10, 15 riders there. They're all on pretty similar bikes, and they're all fast. Like the Spanish kids that are 12, 13, they can beat me on kart track, some of them. So it's like, it's just everything. It's nice because you don't want to get beat by the kids. So it's just that you're riding as hard as you can. Whereas when you go to Fat Cats, for example, you ride 75%. I try ride hard, but it's not the same as riding when someone's beating you. So yeah, it's nice just to have that competition in training, and also just to, I've trained really hard. The motivation's been there this winter. It always is, but no, I didn't want to come in like, it's easy if I didn't train and I'd be in Qatar, the race weekend in Qatar, it's like, oh, could I have trained harder? Whereas I know I've done everything I can, and it's going to come. It just takes time.
And then, as people who follow you on social media, you posted your breakfast up one morning. Was that like a couple of buns and a bit of orange juice or a banana?
That was dinner.
That was
no one got that. That was dinner.
It wasn't porridge, which is a surprise. Do they not do that in Qatar?
That was Barcelona. No, bread and butter. It's hard to get in Spain, and when they have it on the menu, you got to go.
You got to fill your booze, haven't you?
Yeah. The orange juice was more than the bread.
Was it really?
Yeah. Well, also in Qatar, we went to. Yeah, this is really healthy. I went to Nando's for the first time.
Oh, good man! You pop your Nando's cherry. Excellent.
Yeah, and it's really cheap. So the meal was £4 or something.
Scott embarks on his second season with Vision Track Honda in 2023, and while some of his results weren't where he'd hoped, he made a good first impression in his debut season. It's a tough class and crashes are inevitable, but even Scott would agree that there were too many across the season, but it's all part of the learning curve, and it's a really difficult place to show your talent amongst such experienced riders. Late last week, I asked for favourite shows and guests of the Telegram subscribers, and they didn't disappoint. Both Phil Mayhew and Steve Poole were complimentary of myself and Howie, while Will Hintz enjoyed Davo at the TT, Scott Ogden and Brad Ray in that order, and also Howie for the laughs as well. I tell you what, this new co-host of mine needs to be funny. No pressure, Mystery Rider. We also asked for questions and a voicemail from the group as we roll towards the end of the year, and if this show works well, then we'll do a couple of more in the new year. We have a couple of guests lined up early in 2023 to take us to the launch of the new OT23. Bit like the Ducati GP23, only a bit less pretty and a lot less expensive. One question that did come through on the voicemail, our old friend Craig Lowe. What do you got to say, Craig?
Hi Dave, it's Craig. Hope you and Jen are well and everything is going well with the new technology and the dragging off track further and further into the future. All the best for it and great to see how things are progressing for you. Quick thing just around the new categories for BSB this year. What's the thoughts on how the BMW compared to the Ducati will progress, people, and also any thoughts on who's the next up-and-comings from the smaller classes that's going to start breaking through this year, next year, 2024. Anyway, hope you're good. Hope everyone else is good and has a good end of the year and a good Christmas and New Year. And we'll all be chatting in the chat, I'm sure, soon enough.
Thanks, Craig. As for the BMW Cup, it's still run by Steve Plater, who ran the Ducati Tri-Options Cup, so it will be run very well. Until I see an entry list, it's difficult to say how it will go, especially with Dave Shoebridge heading off to World Endurance. I'm sure he'll reappear in some form on the BSB calendar. Maybe Stock 1000, but we'll see. As for the next big thing, British Talent Cup champion Johnny Garnes, he's a bright prospect. It's tough for the British prospects to go to Spain now, like Scott Ogden, Max Cook, Josh Watley and Eddie O'Shea in recent years due to the age change, but it means we keep the likes of Johnny, Reece Stevenson, Carter Brown and Evan Belford. Ollie McCabe will be a strong contender for wins and podiums in 23 after an injury-hit debut season, that's for sure, and expect Luca Hopkins to make the jump forward with Harrison McKay and more. Casey O'Gorman's our sole representative in the Red Bull Rookies Cup, and we wish him all the best in that. We'll be keeping a close eye on his progress. Moving up the classes, Sam Laffins from Northern Ireland has a brilliant opportunity with Binch Racing, the reigning junior Superstock champions, to make his mark on the 600 championship. He's got the pace, but he'll be the first to admit that his consistency wasn't anywhere near where it should have been this year with JR Performance. I also think Seth Crump will be a challenger for 23, as will Aaron Sylvester and Ed Best. Depending on machinery, Owen Jen has a talent, but needs that all-important consistency. And hopefully a better season for Asher Durham. The expected championship charge in 22 just didn't materialise for the Derby rider. British Supersport and National Superstock? Well, with the top three in Supersport moving on, it leaves Lee Johnston to fight off the youth of today with Luke Stapleford. It'll be those two up front without a doubt, and the rest will have to raise the games. Rhys Irwin was good on the Triumph, Jamie Van Sicklerus on the Yamaha, and Eugene McManus Jr. on the Kawasaki, all put in great shifts across the season. Difficult to know who's going to be up there in GP2. Jack Scott's certainly moving on, and by the time this show comes out, he should have been announced at Rapid CDH Kawasaki alongside Liam Delves. Young Luca Allen will take his place at the Ryan Saxelby-run Kavara Projects team, so it'll be interesting to see how the young rider gets on in 2023. For anyone under 25 to shine in National Superstock will be a big ask in 2023. With two of the young protagonists from this year departing for BSB as well as the reigning champion, it'll be hard for anyone to match the pace of Billy McConnell, Braden Elliott and Alex Olsen. Richard Kerr had a strong season and he'll be in the mix, but I'd like to see Jack Nixon make the step up to the top 5 as well as his old sparring partner Joe Talbot. Joe Francis needs a strong season. He's got the talent, that's not in question, and I'd love to see Tom Ward keep it in the mix. He's a great fella and could be a dark horse on the right machinery. One rider I expect to make a reappearance next season after his wild card at Brands Hatch, Brandon Pash, the double Daytona winner. By the time he comes back to the UK, if he does, he could be a treble Daytona winner because he's up for that in March. Let's see what comes, but I'd like to see Brandon Pash back on the UK tracks. I think that just about covers it. As more riders get announced in the support classes over the coming weeks, we'll keep an eye on top of their moves and discuss their chances as and when. All that remains is to say a huge thank you to everyone for listening to the show this year. It's always a privilege for me to be allowed into your ears, your car, your home, wherever you listen, and we're grateful for your support. It's your show as much as ours, so get in touch via the socials or drop us an email at offtrackhost@gmail.com. offtrackhost@gmail.com. Let us know what and who you'd like to hear from over the coming weeks and months, and we'll do our best to accommodate. Have yourselves a fantastic Christmas wherever you are. Eat, drink, be merry, and keep in touch with friends, especially those who are on their own over the festive period. We'll be raising a glass to you all and to the ones we've lost. From our house to yours, we wish you a very Merry Christmas and a happy and healthy 2023. And as always, look after each other. Bye-bye.